like to introduce our next speaker. Next we have Ron Shegda, who will be speaking about the situation with the Pennsylvania state budget. Ron was born and raised in Philadelphia, the city of liberty. During college, he enjoyed biking in the historic downtown on nights like this. Ron would circle Independence Hall or visit Ben Franklin's grave at All Christ Church. Believe it or not, after college, he was a community organizer in Philly's inner city. He built solar greenhouses and water heaters and helped begin the city's waste recycling program. He has since learned that small business is a great direction for poor and rich alike. From first-hand experience, he knows that a solar and windmill economy is not on the horizon. Ron has been a small business person in the Lehigh Valley since 1986. He closely follows public affairs in Harrisburg. Please join me in welcoming Ron Shegda.
Happy birthday, America! Don't you absolutely love this country? We're a nation and state of many small communities, which we must continue to build, neighbor meeting neighbor. So in that spirit, will you take a moment and introduce yourself to someone that's standing next to you that you don't know? There was some news from Harrisburg today. Governor Rendell and all his supporters in the Pennsylvania General Assembly, our legislature, recently had a report on their lineage. They're all related to King George III. We just heard in our declaration that one of the legitimate oppositions that America had to Britain was taxation without representation. Governor, your long-term supporters in the House and the Senate, you stand for taxation. We are those who are represented, and we say on the eve of July 4th, the 233rd birthday of our country, we can't afford any more taxes. There's been a solemn duty of our governor to lead the legislature in passing a budget under our Constitution for the next fiscal year, which just ended a couple days ago on June 30th. It's unprecedented in our state to have an occasional missing of that deadline. Governor, you are 7 for 7 in not delivering a budget on time for our Commonwealth. The Pennsylvania Senate passed a very sensible budget in May of $27 billion, lower than this year's budget. Why? Because we don't have the revenues to support a higher budget, and the governor is going around the state ridiculing the Senate plan by saying that doesn't have enough money. They can't pay for what they want to spend. Yet he and his supporters want to spend $2 billion more. Too many public officials today are just not talking sense. They're not fooling us. We understand what they're saying, and it's not sensible. We do have a responsibility for the poor, for the aged, supporting the Department of Public Welfare, public education, our prisons, our roads, our bridges. Yet our governor and his supporters have squandered 7 years of excessive taxation, spending, and borrowing. When our governor took office in 2003, our general fund budget was $20 billion. This year it's $28 billion, a 40% increase in 6 years, twice the rate of inflation with a stable population. And our population isn't growing because our youngest and brightest are leaving the state. Businesses are leaving our state because we're one of the highest tax states in the country, and businesses aren't coming here because of our high taxation. And so instead of the governor returning money to you, your families, for your small business, for Pennsylvania corporations, he's been spending it. And Pennsylvania's not become more prosperous. But people in Harrisburg, politicians, have become more prosperous. Borrowing has increased too. When the governor took office, Harrisburg's governmental debt was $30 billion. Today it's $40 billion. That's $10 billion more in 6 years. What do we have to show for this? I know it's hard to think in terms of $1 billion, but look at it this way. In 12 million people in the Commonwealth, $1 billion divided by every child, woman, and man comes to $80. The governor, we already have a $3 billion deficit for the year that just ended at the end of June. We have another $3 billion deficit for the year coming ahead, and the governor wants to add another $2 billion of spending. That's 8 times 80. Who here, does everybody here have $640 to hand over to the governor right now? Is one of the problems, and I've been saying as long-term supporters, is one of the problems that too many elected officials become career politicians, especially by holding on to one office for their lifetime? The 56 signers of our Declaration didn't earn a nickel. Many of them suffered greatly, were killed, were tortured. Their families were burned. Their family members were killed. They were imprisoned. They started a tradition in our country. You put in your time of service as a solemn duty, and just like this microphone, you pass it on to the next person, and you return to your business, to your private enterprise, to your farm, to your trade, to your profession, and you don't stay in public office and hang on for your life. If Pennsylvania's budget followed the rate of inflation since 2003, it would be at approximately $25 billion today, which is a little less than what we're taking in. So just think, all of that extra money could have been going toward private enterprise and toward your own family's long-term savings for education. Instead, what do we have coming out of Harrisburg? We don't see any results from these last 6 years. Does government create jobs? We're standing here before the Crayola factory. Crayola Crowns, 2 cousins, Binney and Smith, Lee Iacocca from the Lehigh Valley. What's the face of a governmental enterprise? What enterprise has government created? It's responsible for Social Security and Medicare, but those are facing bankruptcy. Why doesn't our federal government concentrate on them instead of fooling around with private enterprise? So the time to say stop is now, just like this bugler at the top of the column, calling everybody in Pennsylvania to rally, to keep the union together. Each of you need to be encouraged. If you don't know who your state legislators are, find their names, write them a letter, call them, write a letter to the editor, write to the governor. We don't want a budget with new taxes. We have to live within our means, just like all of us here and every business in harder times. And so we say to everybody who's been in office too long, we will see you at the ballot box. God bless America and Pennsylvania.